Listen up, folks. I need to share something that came to light recently about my wife, Sherry. It turns out she was involved in a relationship with a younger man. I've got the evidence right here, and I want you all to take a look. These pictures were taken during a family gathering, and what unfolded next was quite unexpected. During our annual family get-together, my husband, Neil, abruptly stood up and declared to everyone that I was having an affair. He distributed the photos to 15 relatives, including in-laws. As everyone examined the pictures, confusion spread across their faces. Some questioned Neil, demanding an explanation. "What's this all about, Neil?" they asked. Sure, the photos showed Sherry with a young man in a suit, but it wasn't immediately clear what was going on. Neil persisted, pointing out that the suit was an expensive luxury brand, insinuating that Sherry had been secretly meeting with this well-dressed guy. To add fuel to the fire, he presented another photo featuring a different man than the one in the suit. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, standing together, were visibly shocked. My mother-in-law, in disbelief, questioned Sherry about the truth. Sherry admitted to meeting these two men without informing Neil, expressing regret for not being forthright. In response, Neil seemed disappointed but took pride in his perceived victory. He emphasized Sherry's admission, claiming, "Did you hear what she just said? She said she could never tell me. Of course, she can't tell me that she was a married woman seducing two young men." A heavy silence descended upon the room as Neil declared his separation from Sherry. The atmosphere grew cold, and tension filled the air. Amidst the solemnity, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What are you saying?" I exclaimed, unable to contain my disbelief. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I couldn't believe how foolish I had been. My words didn't just elicit a reaction from my husband. They resonated with all our relatives gathered there. It wasn't surprising that those suspected of cheating on my husband found my situation amusing. Their laughter seemed to pierce through the icy tension in the room, fueled by anger and disbelief. My father-in-law, however, broke the silence and addressed me sternly. "Sherry, what are you thinking, laughing in a situation like this? Such an attitude, while bowing down, is unforgivable." I felt compelled to apologize, but I couldn't deny the humor in the situation. "I'm sorry, sir, but it truly was amusing. I couldn't help it. I was merely conversing with these two men," I explained, rising to my feet, joined by my husband. Taking a deep breath, I continued, revealing the real reason for my secrecy. I couldn't tell Neil because I was investigating his affair with them. My revelation left the room in stunned silence once more, the atmosphere heavy with tension. I admitted to meeting these men, but I vehemently denied any infidelity on my part. It was time to address the situation head-on and end my relationship with Neil. But as soon as I made my decision known, my husband lunged at me, incredulous at my explanation. "You were investigating my affair. What kind of excuse is that? No one here would believe such a story. Come clean, admit you're cheating, and apologize to all of us." His accusations felt like a slap in the face, his disbelief palpable. But I refused to back down. It's not a ludicrous excuse. Who's kidding whom here? Lying about my fidelity? Anyone can see through that, I retorted, my resolve unwavering. My in-laws, bewildered by my newfound assertiveness, pressed for clarity. "Sherry, what did you mean about Neil's affair? I can't make sense of any of this. Please explain," they implored, seeking understanding in the midst of chaos. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. "I'm just like him," I admitted, turning to address my stepfather and stepmother. "I was planning to discuss this with you both later when we have more time. I must apologize for the sudden twist in events. Allow me to clarify the situation step by step. The man in the suit I was meeting with happens to be a lawyer. I sought his advice regarding my husband's affair. As soon as I mentioned the word lawyer, my in-laws appeared even more perplexed. To shed light on the matter, I picked up one of the photos my husband had distributed and directed their attention to the lawyer's badge on his suit, though it was barely visible in the picture. Approximately 6 months ago, Neil underwent a noticeable transformation. He had never been particularly concerned about his appearance, but suddenly he began purchasing high-end products without informing me. Earlier, he remarked that the suit in question belonged to a very expensive luxury brand. It seemed that he had picked up this habit during his newfound attention to personal grooming. As I explained, my in-laws and relatives listened in silence, but my husband's face turned red with immediate denial. He questioned my accusations, asking what was wrong with being well-dressed. He assumed I was accusing him of infidelity solely based on his appearance, dismissing it as an improbable excuse. I clarified that his attire was not the sole reason for my suspicion. I had confronted the issue directly by speaking with the woman he was allegedly involved with. Astonishingly, her husband had approached me first, initiating the conversation. Turning to my in-laws, I pointed out the photo my husband had given to my father-in-law, revealing the other man in the suit as the spouse of Neil's supposed lover. Neil, still in disbelief, exclaimed, "Are you being serious? Is this some kind of coincidence? It's hard for me to believe." I couldn't believe it myself when Jimmy, a close friend of mine and the husband of the woman my husband was cheating with, sought my advice. It was a startling revelation. For the past 6 months, Jimmy suspected his wife of infidelity and confided in me about it. In collaboration with Jimmy, we decided to hire a private investigator to delve into the matter. Unexpectedly, Neil's name emerged during the investigation, along with evidence of Jimmy's wife's affair. She had already confessed to cheating on Jimmy. What astonished me further was the discovery that Neil had falsely claimed to be single, leaving Jimmy's wife shocked to learn of my existence. Regardless, the affair itself was unforgivable. Reflecting on the events, I retrieved an envelope from my bag containing crucial evidence. Distributing it to my in-laws and relatives, I revealed the truth. Neil had accused me of infidelity when, in fact, he was the one engaged in an affair. My laughter earlier wasn't out of amusement, but rather disbelief at Neil's audacity and stupidity. He assumed I was oblivious to his deceit, but his actions spoke volumes. As I spoke, a mixture of anger and disappointment resonated in the room. My in-laws and relatives grasped the gravity of the situation. Neil's behavior wasn't just deceitful, it was reprehensible. The evidence of his affair had been meticulously gathered, and his cheating partner had confessed. Now, it was Neil who owed our relatives an apology. The tables had turned drastically. However, Neil's response took an unexpected turn. "I must admit, I was the one involved in an affair, but my husband's explanation shifted the blame entirely onto me, claiming it was Sherry's fault. According to him, since we had no children due to Sherry's infertility, she was essentially useless, unable to fulfill the societal expectation of bearing children and taking care of household chores. This justification left the faces of my parents-in-law and other relatives even more somber. It's true that we had been married for about 3 years without being able to conceive, prompting me to undergo fertility treatment. I had asked my husband to join me in the process, but he was uncooperative, placing the blame squarely on me. He insisted on having children but was unwilling to undergo the necessary steps, providing only the specimen and leaving the rest to me. My father-in-law couldn't contain his frustration at my husband's selfishness and raised his voice, challenging the notion of Sherry being deemed useless. He questioned the idea of discarding her like a tool when she wasn't needed, highlighting how Sherry's support in our marriage had ensured an uninterrupted life. Father-in-law emphasized that household chores and bearing children were not to be taken for granted. The tension among the in-laws intensified, and my nerves were on edge. Some relatives, including housewives like me, were deeply offended by my husband's assertion that it was common sense for women to handle housework and bear children. It was not just a personal insult, but a broader affront to housewives and individuals facing infertility worldwide. My husband's narrow perspective became apparent. He only considered what was directly in front of him, oblivious to the complexities faced by others. In this tense atmosphere, my father-in-law expressed his anger, making it clear that my husband's mindset was flawed and superficial. Despite the tension, my husband astonishingly uttered the impossible words, treating Sherry as if she were a tool and deeming her even less valuable due to infertility. I've reconsidered, and I want to thank Sherry. You're right, Dad. I want to be happy, and having a child is essential for that. Do you understand? My father-in-law, veins almost bursting from his intense emotions, leaned in close to my husband, who is my mother-in-law, and had to step in to intervene. Neil, I know you want a child, but cheating on Sherry and deceiving us was not the way to go about it. Why did you accuse her of cheating on you? Is it just to avoid paying alimony? Pretending she cheated allows you to get a divorce and receive alimony. That's why I did it. Well, even if I fail, I can always pay for it to resolve everything. My mother-in-law, almost losing herself, tried to confront him physically, but my father-in-law stopped her, urging her to calm down. He reasoned, beating up a guy like this only hurts you. He doesn't even deserve your punch, but he's our son, and we can't just keep quiet about it. You're older, Mom, you need to calm down. I thought that was a good way to go about it, but I can't help it. Sherry and I are getting a divorce soon, and I'm moving out of the house. Sherry, I'll pay you alimony too, so don't complain, okay? And don't come crying back to me about how much you miss me. Whatever, do what you want. You're the one who should better not come crying back to me after our divorce. I'm not going to cry for you, you idiot. Well, this will be the last time, so I'll just hear you say goodbye, Sherry. What do you have to say? All the relatives were already in a state of anger, beyond furious at him, who was swearing to the very end. In the midst of this, I smiled at him and gave him a few words. You said you'd throw me away because I'm infertile. But that's a funny thing to say because I'm not infertile. You are. What? What'd you just say? I'm not infertile, and now you're throwing me away. I don't care anymore, though. You've not only deceived me, but also your mom and dad and all your relatives. You were way out of line as a person, and I don't even want to breathe the same air with you anymore. Hey, Sherry, answer my question. What did you just say? That I'm infertile? My husband, who had been unbothered so far, was finally upset. I'm not bluffing. It was you who was infertile, not me. When I asked for fertility treatment, you blamed me and were uncooperative. You just gave me the specimen and left the rest to me. And that's when I found out that you were infertile. Screw you. You're lying, aren't you? You're lying just to get me in trouble, aren't you? I don't believe you. I don't need your belief anymore. It doesn't matter now that I know the truth about you. My husband desperately interrogated me. My in-laws and other relatives were unaware of his infertility, and it must have been surprising for them. However, the revelation no longer held significance. The consensus among the relatives was clear. My husband and I should get a divorce. It may not matter to you, but it matters to me, Sherry. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted kids, didn't you know? He questioned. I explained that I had tried to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Instead, I sought advice from my friend Jimmy, only to discover that Jimmy's wife was having an affair with my husband. I'm never going to be able to have kids, maybe with fertility treatments, maybe not. Well, for someone like you who doesn't value your family, I don't think you'll be able to continue your fertility treatments. Infertility treatment is hard work, and with the support of your family, you might have been able to continue. But you no longer have anyone to rely on, so why don't you just give up? I declared. He looked to his in-laws and relatives for support. But after all the inhumane things he had said and done, no one answered him. In the end, I divorced my husband, and Jimmy divorced his wife. We both filed for alimony, and Jim's wife blamed Neil for her divorce, causing him constant trouble. Despite his ongoing pursuit of having kids through fertility treatments, he struggled to find a marriage partner due to the repercussions of his actions. A few years later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. After my divorce, I remarried, even though I never thought it would happen. My current husband, who has also experienced divorce, expressed his desire to start a new life with me. We support each other, and my daughter is growing up in a happy environment. However, I don't take it for granted. I still believe